Welcome to this week's installment in our Football Officials video training series. We're studying the National Federation of High School Rules and five-man mechanics. Technical advisors are Greg Downham, Dax Hill, and George Demetrio. Video technical assistance provided by Jim Woods and Sam Porter. I'm your host, Todd Allen, the Executive Director of the Arkansas Association of High School Officials. Visit our website at aahso.com. We're helping good officials get better. This week, we'll take a look at penalty enforcement on scoring plays, and then we're going to spend a lot of time on fighting, striking, and what exactly qualifies for an ejection. Training sponsored by the Reading Study Guide to the NFHS Football Rules. The Reading Study Guide. When you're through learning, you're through. Now, several components here that we're going to talk about on this next play. Obviously, we're going to talk about running into the kicker, and you'll see that here in just a moment. We're also going to talk about penalty enforcement, situational awareness. That's just basically knowing what's going on around us in a play, and then enhanced situational awareness. And that's when something about what's going on should clue us in that something's not right, and we need to regroup, refocus, and figure out what the heck went wrong. Let's take a look at this play. And it involves just a try for point, extra point play, and we'll take a look at it here, and I'll run through and let you see what you see here. All right, a couple things we want to look at before we go to the end zone shot. But the thing that struck me about this play initially was there's not a whole lot of contact. The kicker has time to get down and refocus or reposition himself. Then he gets bumped, and then he does a great little stumble backwards and roll around and fall on the ground and really maybe tricks us into something here that's not there. This is just a little bit of incidental contact. But we do throw a flag here, and we can see that flag is on the ground right here. And then the thing that I want you to notice is, did you pick up on this? Watch the action of these two officials here, because that action is pretty important. They're signaling no good. Again, we have this flag on the play here, but they're signaling this kick's no good. So what exactly happens here and what goes wrong? Take a look at it from the end zone. You can see a little bit of this contact. Not a whole lot, like I mentioned earlier, but what do you say? This is a judgment call, and there's some contact there. But you can see the kicker's almost comes to a complete stop before that flop and roll and dash and tricks us into this foul. What we do here is we call roughing or running into the kicker, and then we notice we should be kicking off from the 40-yard line. But we're not. We're kicking it off from the 45. Now, who handles the ball in a five-man crew? It's the back judge. And so the back judge right here was also the same official that we saw in this previous play, signaling that the kick was no good. So how does he not know that this ball can't be placed on the 45-yard line? The only way you can carry a foul over is on a scoring play. Well, he signals no good. Obviously, we don't have a scoring play, so the only thing we can do in this play is half the distance to the goal and retry. That's the only thing we could have done with this foul. And then we end up moving the ball down the field and kicking off, and after the kickoff, the coach goes crazy, and he notices that the scoreboard has his score as 13. The coach didn't realize that the kick was no good. So he had no problem at all with us tacking this foul on to the ensuing kickoff because he thought it was a scoring play, when in fact it wasn't. And after we kick this off, there's no going back. We can't undo the good. So the important messages here is really for all five officials, but particularly this back judge. You should have had enhanced situational awareness when you knew we were kicking off, marking off this penalty 5 yards, and kicking off when we did not have a scoring play. The kick was no good. So you should have immediately gone into the referee and said the kick was no good. If we have a foul, the only option is to replay the down. So we've got to be cut in, know what's going on. If something's not right, stop the game, talk about it, and let's get these plays right. Penalty enforcement involves all five officials, and when it's done wrong, we downgrade all five officials. We've seen a sharp rise in the last couple of weeks for players that have been disqualified from our games, and we're going back and reviewing these plays, and we're noticing that conduct doesn't rise to the level of ejection, or it doesn't even meet the criteria, and so we want to try to be more consistent with that. When we disqualify a player for fighting, now that's very, very broad. Fighting, just the term. It's broad and subjective, and it's really up to the discretion of the covering official, but it's important that this rule is administered consistently throughout the state. Players need to be disqualified only when they've clearly violated the rule. Fighting can be easily confused with other dead ball personal fouls, especially unnecessary roughness, which is contained in 9.4.3G. Now, fighting is defined as any attempt by a player or non-player to strike or engage a player or non-player in a combative manner unrelated to football. Such acts include, but they're not limited to, attempts to strike an opponent with the arm, hands, leg, or foot, whether or not there's contact. There is more specific language in 9.4.3J, which defines a strike as to strike an opponent with his fist, locked hands, forearms, elbow, kick, or knee. So a shove with an open hand would not be considered fighting. It's just shoving, and that's just could be a personal foul, dead ball. But when players just shove or chicken fight, we want to see officials hustling out there and getting in the middle and just breaking this stuff up. These non-football related fouls are very, very frustrating, and we want to keep them to a very, very bare minimum. So now when we talk about live ball fouls, one of the essential elements for fighting is for the blow to be delivered in a manner that's unrelated to football. An illegal blocking technique is a football-related act. So only in extreme cases would we have an illegal block to be considered fighting. Hands to the face, a head slap, these are personal fouls and not fighting. But a punch at the ball, which is intended to knock it loose, is certainly not fighting. Now, it's possible that you could have fouls that could be so flagrant that they deserve disqualification, but you got to avoid placing the fighting label on live ball fouls. Now, dead ball fouls, contacting an opponent while the ball is dead, is likely related to football because the football's dead at the time. But however, there's continuing action immediately after the ball becomes dead that can be football related. So therefore, late hits are usually not fighting. Now, the following are the most common examples of fighting: striking the opponent with a closed fist, kicking, stomping, delivering a roundhouse blow to the head, and grabbing the face mask and shaking the opponent. Now, here are some acts that are not considered acts of fighting. Just shoving an opponent. When two players both have a hold of each other and they're kind of just chicken fighting or they're wrestling, that's not fighting. Officials have to take care to note that if a player who does not initiate the fight actually retaliates and is not merely just taking action to protect himself. If a player is trying to protect himself and not actually fighting, we don't want to disqualify them from the game. Now, there's a big difference between shoving and striking, because we know from 9.3.4J that striking involves a closed fist. The very same action of an opponent taking an open-handed fist to the face mask of his opponent, that would be a shove. But if he closes his fist and does the exact same action to the face mask of his opponent, that would be a punch or a strike, and we could disqualify. Now, on the ground, when we talk about a player kicking, if there's any separation between the player's foot and his opponent and he strikes him, that's a kick. Now, if my foot's up against my opponent and I just shove him off of me, that would be a shove. We'll take a look at one of those plays in just a minute. But first, let's start with this play. Look at this player that we circle right here and watch his action as he gets off of his opponent. You see that little slap right there? That's an open-handed slap. Certainly a personal foul. And we'd want this penalized 15 yards for an open-handed slap. But we do not want this player ejected. This is an awfully good player to take over to the coach and say, hey coach, 15-yard personal foul. He open-handed slapped his opponent. We're not going to eject him, but you need to take a look at this action. Talk to this player. Maybe the coach will voluntarily pull him out of the game and let him cool off. That's what we can hope for. But we certainly wouldn't want this play to have this player disqualified from the game. All right, here's another play to look at. And remember, we just said that for a player to be involved in fighting, it needs to be something completely unrelated to action, unrelated to football. Keep your eye on this player, the defensive player right here. He's getting blocked very, very well in this scoring play. He's trying to work his way loose, and he ends up with this rip technique. His hand flies back, and he flails and hits his opponent in the side of the head here. And that's not fighting. notice the action of the offensive player, how when the ball is dead, he just turns around and walks away. He knows he hasn't been punched. This guy's just trying to get him off of him, but he can't. He's gotten beat here, and so he does this technique to try to get loose, and it's too late. It's right as the offensive player is actually giving up on the play because he knows the ball has already gone across the goal line. So this action, this continuing action in a live ball situation is almost never fighting. This is almost never a punch. This is a rip technique, a poor technique to try to get off this block, but he's having his hind end handed to him, and so he's not able to get off the block. But we actually throw a flag here by the back judge, and we disqualify this player for fighting. And this is not fighting. I think that we could all agree when we watch this. This is not in any way, shape, a fighting call. We would not want this called as a punch. Close. One more play for you to take a look at. This one involves the runner, and after he's tackled, watch his action. Now we know there's really a huge cutoff in live ball and continuing action, and then just dead ball action. And this is dead ball action because the player's down, and then watch what he does with his opponents. And I believe his opponent is rolling up his ankle here, and he's just trying to get this guy off. But remember, we talked about with the foot, if the foot's up against our opponent and we just use our foot to shove him off, then it would just be a pushing motion. But if there's any daylight between the bottom of our foot and our opponent, and we do this same action where there's now an impact with the bottom of the foot and the player, that's a kick. And I mean, really, that's what we're just talking about. How do we describe to someone the difference between a shove with our foot and a kick with our foot? And the difference is, before the impact, are we in contact with the opponent? Do we initiate the act and shove him off? If there's two separate actions, if our foot goes against our opponent is one act, and then we shove him with the other, then that's just a shove. If it's just one act where we draw our foot back, we create separation between our foot and the opponent, and then we strike him, that's simply a kick. It's that simple. And you see this action, this is a kick. And the back judge here gets this action, and we properly officiate this as a personal foul. We eject this player for kicking his opponent. Now, whether his opponent deserved to be kicked or not, actually this is Dirty Pool rolling around here on the ankle, trying to roll the ankle up. But this is what we don't see that on the field live. We can certainly see it here when we watch it on video, but live action, all we see here is this kick, and this certainly meets the definition of the rule. This is an ejectable offense. We've looked at several plays here, and one last thing I wanted to share with you, and this is something from Dax Hill, the back judge in the Southeast Conference. When we look at video of players that have been ejected from the game, we want to see home runs. We want them to be really, really big. Everyone on the crew should say this is a home run. This is a guy that needs to be ejected from the game. And so I think that's critical language, and I like the way that Dax talks about that and calls it a home run, because it really puts into perspective they need to be really, really big before we disqualify a player. You know, we have only so many games in a year that these players play, and if you're a senior and you lose a game or a game and a half over something that's not a home run, that's just not doing justice to the game. And that's ultimately our biggest responsibility, is the stewards of fair play, and make sure that everything is equitable. Everything we can possibly get right, let's get right. And ejections are something we need to be 110% right. If we have to err, it's much better to err on the side of a personal foul 15-yard penalty than it is to have a personal foul 15-yard penalty and a disqualification, which is unfair. So keep that in mind as you work this week. Talk about in your pregame how you're going to handle ejections, how your crew's going to work together to try to get multiple looks from multiple angles on a play. If we suspect that it's an ejectable offense, we're going to talk about it and ask ourselves, is this one of the home runs? If it's not, much better off going 15 yards, personal foul, than ever think about an ejection. Any questions or comments? Here's my email address. Got a couple of email addresses here for you. Either one, if you'd like to send us an email, let us know what you think about the videos or what we can do to better serve you with these training videos. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week. Good luck with your game this week. Until next week, Todd Allen saying thanks for checking out the video.